The pounding started before my brain could even remember what peace felt like. 3 hard blows on the front door, a pause, then again. Steady, official, like whoever stood outside had the right to break my life open if I didn't move fast enough. I sat up so quickly the blanket slid to my waist. The room was still dark, the air cold on my skin, and for one stupid second I thought it was a nightmare. Then I heard it, the faint crackle of a radio outside, the soft jingle of gear, the weight of boots shifting on my porch. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand, just after 6. No one came to my house at 6 in the morning unless something was wrong. I swung my feet onto the floor and crossed the hallway barefoot, heart thudding so loud it filled my ears. Through the peephole, I saw a tan uniform and a badge catching the porch light, a deputy sheriff. One hand rested near his belt, not threatening, just trained. A folder sat tucked under his arm like a weapon made of paper. "Ma'am," he called through the door, voice calm and practiced. "I need you to come to the door." My mouth dried. I forced my fingers to unlatch the chain and open it just enough to look him in the eye. He wasn't young, early 40s maybe, tired lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind of face that had seen too many families fall apart and had learned not to flinch. "Can I help you?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. He nodded once, polite, almost apologetic. "Are you Maya Hart?" "Yes." He shifted the folder and pulled out a sheet with a seal at the top. "Ma'am, I'm Deputy Calhoun. I'm here to serve you with an eviction order." The words hit like a bucket of ice water. Eviction. My throat tightened. "That's not possible. This is my home." "I understand," he said, and I believed he did, at least the part where people always said those words right before they did something that ruined you. "I'm not here to argue the facts. I'm here because the court issued an order. According to the file, you have to vacate the premises today." Today? The porch tilted under my feet. A nausea rose so fast I had to grip the doorframe. "I haven't even—" swallowed hard. "I haven't been to court. No one notified me." Deputy Calhoun's gaze flicked down to the papers, then back up. "There was a hearing. The plaintiff states you were properly served. You didn't appear. A default judgment was entered." A default judgment, like the court had decided my life without me in the room. My thoughts ran wild, scrambling for something that made sense. A scam, a mix-up, a mistake in an address. Then, as if my body knew where to look before my mind did, I turned my head. Across the street, half hidden behind a bare tree in the shadow of a parked car, 2 figures stood on the sidewalk, not close enough to be part of the scene, not far enough to pretend they weren't watching. My parents. My mother's arms were folded tight across her chest, like she was bracing for a storm. My father stood with his hands in his coat pockets, shoulders stiff, eyes locked on me. They weren't surprised. They weren't confused. They were waiting. A cold clarity slid through me, sharp and quiet. This wasn't a mistake. I looked back at the deputy, but my voice didn't come from fear anymore. It came from something deeper, something that had always lived in my bones and was finally waking up. "Who filed this?" I asked. Deputy Calhoun hesitated, not because he didn't know, because he did. He lowered the folder slightly, like he was giving me a second to breathe before the floor dropped out from under me. "The plaintiff is listed as—" He paused, eyes flicking toward the street, noticing what I'd noticed. Then he finished, softly, as if saying it too loudly might break whatever fragile thing was still holding me together. "Your parents." The air left my lungs. For a second, I couldn't hear anything except the ringing in my ears. My knees threatened to fold, but I stayed upright out of pure stubbornness. I had always been the one who stayed upright. In school, at work, at family dinners where love came with conditions. My mother raised her chin across the streets, like she was daring me to cry, daring me to make her the villain out loud. My father didn't move. He just watched, expression carved from stone. Deputy Calhoun cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I know this is—" "Stop," I said, and my voice surprised even me. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had an edge now, a steadiness I didn't feel but could borrow. I took the papers with shaking hands and scanned the top lines. The address was mine. The case number was real. The judge's signature looked like ink could carry the weight of a house. Then I saw the service section. Served by substitute service. Signed by Linda Hart. My mother's name. I stared at it until the letters blurred. She had signed for the papers that were supposed to warn me. She had made sure I never saw them. She had watched me live in this house, paying taxes, repairing the roof, replacing broken locks, turning the spare bedroom into an office, while she quietly built a trap. Deputy Calhoun shifted his weight, uncomfortable now, like he wished he could be anywhere else. "Ma'am, if you believe there's an error, you can contact the court. But the order is active. I'll need you to begin packing." Across the street, my mother stepped forward half a pace, as if the show was finally starting. My hands tightened around the paperwork. My whole body trembled, but my mind narrowed to one hard point. They thought this was the end. They thought I'd panic, beg, collapse. They didn't understand something about me. If you corner me, I don't crumble. I document. I breathed in, slow and controlled, and met Deputy Calhoun's eyes. "Give me 10 minutes, I said. Not to pack, to make a call. He frowned slightly. "Ma'am?" 10 minutes, I repeated, and this time it sounded like a promise. Because while my parents stood across the street waiting to watch me lose everything, I was already thinking about one thing. Not how to survive the morning. How to take my life back from the people who signed it away. The first thing I did wasn't cry. It wasn't because I didn't want to. My throat burned and my eyes stung so badly it felt like sand had been poured behind them. But crying would have been a gift. It would have been proof to my parents across the street that they'd finally broken me. So I swallowed the ache, turned the deadbolts, and shut the door with careful hands. Then I did what I'd learned to do in every moment life tried to take something from me. I gathered evidence. I grabbed my phone and snapped photos of every page: the eviction order, the case number, the judge's signature, the section that said I'd been served by substitute service, and the neat cursive that made my stomach twist: Linda Hart. I texted my closest friend, Janelle, one line: "Sheriff here. Eviction order. Mom and Dad filed it. Calling the court now." My hands shook so hard I had to brace my forearm against the kitchen counter just to keep the phone steady. The house was quiet in that eerie early morning way, like it didn't understand it was about to be ripped away from me. I dialed the courthouse number on the paperwork. It rang and rang and rang. Of course, it was barely 6:30. The court wouldn't even open for hours. I needed a different door. I opened my laptop, fingers flying like panic could be turned into speed. The county clerk's website loaded slowly, each second stretching thin as wire. When it finally appeared, I searched the case number. There it was, my name typed in black letters like a stranger's. Maya Hart, defendant. Plaintiff, Linda Hart and Richard Hart. It was real. My vision tunneled. I forced myself to scroll. Hearing date, 2 weeks ago. Status, default judgment entered. Writ of possession issued. Writ of possession, the phrase that meant the sheriff could remove me like I was an object left behind. I inhaled through my nose, slow, until my heart stopped trying to leap out of my chest. Okay, if the court had moved without me, then the court could be made to stop, but not with emotion, not with a story, with procedure. I clicked on Documents. That's when I saw it. A proof of service filed by a process server. It claimed they had attempted to serve me at my home, couldn't reach me, then left the papers with an adult resident at the address. Adult resident. I lived alone. My nails dug into my palm so hard it hurt. I clicked the attachment and read every line until it sharpened into something I could use. Name of person served, Linda Hart. Relationship to defendant, mother. Description, female, late 50s, brown hair. My mother had done more than sign. She had stood at my door and taken the papers meant for me. And then, according to the court, she had become my adult resident. My jaw clenched until it ached. Across the street, my parents were still there. I could feel them, even without looking, like a pressure on the glass. I walked to the front window and pulled the curtain back just an inch. My mother and father had moved closer now, lingering near their car like they were waiting for the moment I stepped outside. My mother's posture screamed victory. My father's face was unreadable, but his eyes never left my house. They wanted the scene, the pleading, the humiliation. I dropped the curtain. Not today. I opened a new tab and searched Emergency Motion, Stay Writ of Possession, Default Judgment, Improper Service. A dozen results came up, most of them useless, but one phrase repeated itself across legal forms and court self-help pages like a drumbeat. Request an emergency hearing, file a motion to set aside default. Challenge service. Challenge service. Because if the service was improper, everything that followed was built on sand. My fingers trembled again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, direction. I printed the proof of service and the docket summary. The printer whirred, loud in the silent kitchen. Then my phone buzzed. Janelle. I answered on the first ring. I don't have time, I said, voice tight. You do, she snapped. Tell me where you are. In my house, I whispered. The sheriff is literally outside. Are you alone? Yes. Okay, listen to me. Do not leave that house without locking it. Do not talk to your parents, and if the deputy tries to force you out before the court opens, you tell him you're filing an emergency motion and you need time to contact the clerk. I already tried, I said. They're closed. Then you hold the line until they open. You hear me? You don't pack, you don't surrender. You stall legally. A hard laugh tried to break out of me, half sob, half something sharp. They think they've won. Let them think it, Janelle said. What do you need? I looked at the papers spread across my counter like a map, my life reduced to filings and stamps. I need proof I never got served, and I need proof she lied. Janelle was silent for a beat. Then her voice turned low. Then you document everything. Texts, emails, call logs. Take screenshots. And Maya, check your mailbox. Check your door camera. Anything. Door camera. I didn't have one because I never thought I'd need proof that my own mother would betray me. But I did have something else. I opened my text messages and scrolled back over the past month. There were dozens from my mother, carefully phrased, sweet on the surface, pushing me to come talk, asking when I'd be home, insisting we needed to resolve things as a family. At the time, I thought she was trying to reconcile. Now I understood. She wasn't trying to talk. She was trying to make sure she knew when I wasn't home. My stomach rolled. Then I saw it. A message from 10 days ago, sent at 2:17 p.m. Are you at the house today? I have something important to drop off. And my reply, no, I'm at work till late. My breath caught. That wasn't just a casual question. That was timing. That was a setup. I screenshot it. Then another message 3 days later. You really should stop being stubborn. Some things aren't yours to keep. Some things aren't yours to keep. My hands went cold. I didn't know exactly how, but I could feel it. There was more beneath the surface, something bigger than an eviction. My parents weren't only trying to throw me out, they were trying to take the house itself. I looked at the eviction order again, at the case number, at the way my mother's name sat there like a signature on my downfall. My fear didn't vanish. It crystallized. Because now I had a plan. At 8 a.m., the courthouse would open, and when it did, I wasn't walking in as a daughter begging for mercy. I was walking in as the defendant with proof of fraud in my hands. And my parents, well, they were about to learn what happens when you try to bury someone who knows how to dig up the record. By 7:45, the sun had climbed just high enough to make everything look normal. That was the cruelest part. The sky was pale blue. A neighbor's sprinklers clicked on down the street. Somewhere a dog barked like it was any other weekday morning. But my world was split in two. Inside my house, I stood at the kitchen counter with a stack of printed documents, screenshots, and notes written in shaky pen. Outside, Deputy Calhoun waited in his patrol vehicle, parked a polite distance away, like patience could make this less violent. Across the street, my parents still hovered near their car, watching the front door as if the house were a prize on a game show. I didn't look at them. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch with my papers tucked in a folder. Deputy Calhoun got out of his vehicle immediately, posture calm but alert. "Ma'am," he said. "I'm going to the courthouse," I replied. "I'm filing an emergency motion to stay the writ. The service was improper. My mother took the papers. I never received notice." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in focus. "Do you have proof?" I held up my phone. "Screenshots. The proof of service lists her as an adult resident. I live alone." He exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath that said he'd seen this before, but rarely with a mother's name on the page. "I can't advise you legally," he said carefully, "but I can tell you this. Move fast. The clerk's office opens at 8. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "I'll note in my report that you informed me you're seeking immediate relief from the court. It doesn't cancel the order, but it documents your intent." Document. The word hit me like a rope thrown across deep water. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. As I walked down my front steps, I felt eyes on me like heat. I kept my chin level and my shoulders steady. I didn't give my parents what they wanted. No tears, no pleading. My mother called my name anyway, sharp and sweet at the same time. "Maya, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I kept walking. My father stepped forward. "You can fix this," he said, voice low, as if he was offering mercy. "Just do the right thing." I stopped, not because his words reached me, because my body needed 1 second to turn the anger into something useful. I turned my head just enough to look at them, both of them, standing there like two people who believed the world would always choose them. "This is my house," I said quietly, "and if you think you can steal it with paperwork, you've forgotten who I am." My mother's mouth tightened. "We're not stealing anything. We're protecting our family's property." I didn't answer. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove. At the courthouse, the metal detector beeped as I passed through. My hands were damp around the folder. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner and old air conditioning. A line of people already waited at the clerk's window, some holding child support forms, some holding traffic tickets, all of them carrying their own private emergencies. Mine just happened to be waiting at my front door with a deputy sheriff. When it was my turn, I stepped forward and slid the case number under the glass. "I need to file an emergency motion to stay a writ of possession," I said. My voice didn't wobble. I wouldn't let it. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a neat bun, blinked at me. "Writ of possession?" She typed fast, then frowned at her screen. This was issued yesterday. Yes, I said, and it's based on improper service. I never received the summons. The proof of service says my mother accepted it as an adult resident. I live alone. The clerk's eyebrows rose just a fraction, but her hands didn't stop moving. Do you have supporting documentation? I pushed my evidence forward, the printed proof of service, the docket summary, the screenshots of my mother texting to find out when I wasn't home. The clerk scanned the documents, lips pressing tighter with each line. Okay, she said finally, you can file a motion to set aside the default judgment and request an emergency hearing. We also have a self-help center down the hall. They can help you format the motion. I don't have time for a class, I said, sharper than I intended. I softened immediately. I'm sorry, the sheriff is at my house. They told me I have to be out today. The clerk's gaze flicked up to mine, and something shifted in her expression. Not pity, recognition. Go to self-help, she repeated, firmer now. Tell them your timeline. If you file within the hour, we can route it for same-day review. I didn't waste another second. The self-help center was a small room with metal chairs and a few computer terminals. A volunteer attorney sat at a desk reading over a stack of forms. He looked up as I entered, took one look at my face, and gestured me forward. Eviction? He asked. Eviction filed by my parents, I said, and watched his expression freeze for half a heartbeat. Default judgment, improper service, I need a stay. He pulled the proof of service toward him and read it quickly. Then his mouth flattened. This is messy, he murmured. I don't need messy, I need legal. He nodded slowly, then tapped the page where my mother's name appeared. Improper service is a strong argument if you can show she didn't live there. Utility bills in your name, driver's license address, anything showing sole residence. I have them, I said. All of it. Good. He pulled a blank template from a stack. We'll file a motion to set aside default and a request for an emergency stay, but I'm going to tell you something right now. What? My throat tightened again, bracing. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see the docket list more clearly, then pointed to a recent filing I hadn't clicked earlier. Exhibit C, quitclaim deed. My stomach dropped like an elevator with a cut cable. What is that? I asked, though my body already knew. A quitclaim deed is used to transfer interest in property, he said carefully. According to this filing, your parents submitted a deed showing the house was transferred out of your name. I stared at the words until they blurred. That's impossible, I whispered. I never signed anything. The volunteer attorney's eyes sharpened. Then we have a bigger problem than an eviction. He clicked the attachment, and the PDF opened on the screen. My name was there. My signature was there. Dated 2 weeks ago. Notarized. I leaned closer, pulse roaring in my ears. The signature looked like mine in the way a mask looks like a face. Similar shape, wrong soul. My hands began to shake again, but this time wasn't fear. It was fury. Below the signature block was a notary stamp and a name. I read it once, twice, then out loud, like speaking it would make it real. Notary Public Elaine Mercer. The volunteer attorney sat back slightly, voice turning low. If you didn't sign this, it's fraud, and if it was notarized without you present, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to, because in that moment, the story snapped into focus like a trap I finally saw. The eviction wasn't the goal, it was the distraction. They weren't just trying to kick me out, they were trying to erase me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with stiff fingers. A text from my mother. Stop running to the court. Come talk like an adult. You still have time to do this the easy way. I stared at the screen, then at the forged signature on the deed, then back at the message. Easy way. For them. I looked up at the volunteer attorney, voice steady as steel. I want an emergency hearing, and I want that notary in the room. He studied me for a long beat, then nodded once. Okay, he said. But be ready, because if this deed is in the record, your parents are going to claim you signed it willingly. He paused, eyes locked on mine. And if the judge believes them for even a second, you don't just lose the hearing, you lose the house. By the time I left the self-help center, My folder had doubled in thickness, and my hands had stopped shaking. Not because I wasn't scared, because fear had finally found a job to do. I filed the motion to set aside the default, the request to stay the writ, and a sworn declaration that said the truth in plain language. I lived alone, I was never served, and I never signed any deed transferring my home. I attached copies of my driver's license, utility bills, tax records, and the screenshots of my mother's texts asking when I wouldn't be home. The clerk stamped everything with a dull thud that felt like a heartbeat returning. "Go to Department 7, she told me. "The judge will review the stay request this morning." Department 7 sounded like an elevator that only went down. I walked there anyway. The hallway outside the courtroom was crowded with people holding manila envelopes in quiet dread. I found an empty seat and tried to breathe without letting my lungs stutter. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed again, my mother stacking messages like she could build a wall out of them. "You're embarrassing us. This is family business. Stop before you make it worse." I didn't respond. I didn't even delete them. I let them sit there, time-stamped, because sometimes poison is only useful once it's labeled. A side door opened and a bailiff called my case number. My stomach tightened as I stood and walked inside. The courtroom was colder than the hallway, the kind of cold that makes you feel smaller on purpose. The judge sat above everything, a human behind a mountain of wood and rules. I could feel my heartbeat against the paper in my folder. Then the other side door opened. My parents walked in like they belonged there. My mother wore a cream coat and a perfectly composed expression, as if she'd come to correct a billing mistake. My father moved beside her, jaw set, eyes flat. Behind them, a man in a suit carried a briefcase and the kind of confidence that had never been forced to improvise. They didn't look at me like a daughter. They looked at me like a problem that had survived longer than expected. The judge glanced down at the file, then up at us. "This is a request for an emergency stay of a writ of possession," he said, voice steady and unimpressed. "Defendant claims improper service and alleges fraud regarding a quitclaim deed." The word fraud landed like a match on gasoline. My mother's lips tightened, but she didn't flinch. The judge continued, "Defendant, you're representing yourself." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "And plaintiffs?" The attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor, representing Linda and Richard Hart." The judge's eyes narrowed slightly at the shared last name, just enough to show he noticed. "Family matter," he murmured, then looked back down at the paperwork. "All right, this is an emergency request. I'm not deciding ownership today. I'm deciding whether to pause enforcement until we can determine whether proper notice was given." He turned to me. "Defendant, what is your basis for improper service?" I stepped forward, hands tight around my folder. "The proof of service states my mother was served at my home as an adult resident. She does not live there. I live alone. I never received the summons, never had notice of the hearing, and that's why there was default." The judge held out a hand. "Documentation." I approached the clerk's desk and handed over my exhibits. The judge skimmed my driver's license, the utility statements, the property tax bill, then the proof of service with my mother's name on it. He looked up. "Plaintiff's counsel?" The attorney smiled like he'd practiced in a mirror. "Your Honor, service was completed under substitute service rules. The process server attested under penalty of perjury that he served an adult at the residence who identified herself as the defendant's mother. That satisfies the statute." My mother's gaze slid to me, calm and cold, like she wanted me to explode so she could point and say, "See?" I didn't give her that. "Your Honor," I said, voice measured, "even if a process server handed papers to someone on my porch, that person doesn't become a resident. And she didn't give me the documents. She signed for them and hid them. I have texts from her asking when I wouldn't be home." The judge held up a finger. One issue at a time. He tapped the file. Now about the deed. Defendant claims she never signed it. Yes, I said. That signature is not mine. The attorney's smile didn't fade. Your Honor, the deed is notarized. The notary stamp confirms identity. The document has been recorded. The judge's gaze sharpened. A notarized document is evidence. It is not magic. Defendant is alleging forgery. That is serious. My father shifted for the first time, a small movement that gave away irritation. My mother stayed still, but her hands tightened around her purse strap. The judge leaned forward. Given the allegations and the apparent family relationship, I am granting a temporary stay of the writ of possession pending an evidentiary hearing. My knees nearly buckled with relief, but I kept my face neutral. My mother's composure cracked for half a second, just a flicker. Her lips parted as if she couldn't believe someone had said no to her. The judge wasn't done. He turned to the attorney. I also want the notary present at the evidentiary hearing. If she notarized a deed without the signer present, that is a problem for more than this courtroom. The attorney nodded, but his jaw tightened. Then my mother finally spoke, voice sweet as polished glass. Your Honor, my daughter has been unstable. She makes accusations when she doesn't get her way. We tried to resolve this privately. The judge looked at her for a long beat, expression unreadable. Ma'am, he said evenly, this court resolves matters with evidence, not character sketches. Something in my chest loosened. As the bailiff called the next case, my parents gathered their things. My mother's eyes locked onto mine as she passed, and for the first time that morning, the calm mask slipped. This wasn't over. Her voice dropped low enough that only I could hear. You just made a very expensive mistake, she whispered. I watched her walk out, then looked down at my phone. A new message lit the screen, from an unknown number. Stop digging. The notary won't help you, and if you push this to the end, you'll lose more than a house. I didn't answer the unknown number. I screenshotted it. Then I forwarded it to Janelle with 2 words that finally made my fear feel smaller than my purpose. New threats. Her reply came fast. Good, keep it. Build the record. 2 weeks later, I walked back into Department 7 with a folder so thick it wouldn't close properly. The temporary stay had bought me time, but time only matters if you use it. I had. I pulled my credit report and placed a fraud alert on everything tied to my name. I requested certified copies of the recorded deed. I gathered every utility bill, every tax statement, every insurance policy that showed one truth. I lived there, alone, consistently, legally. And then I found the piece my parents didn't expect me to touch, the notary. Elaine Mercer sat in the hallway outside the courtroom with her hands folded in her lap like she was trying to hold herself together. Late 40s, neat blazer, hair clipped back. Her eyes didn't look like a villain's. They looked like someone who'd made a series of small choices until one of them grew teeth. When she saw me, she swallowed hard and stared at my folder like it could bite her. My parents arrived 5 minutes later, dressed like it was a fundraiser. My mother smiled at people she didn't know. My father carried himself like a man walking into a room that always obeyed him. Their attorney walked between them like a shield. Nobody smiled at Elaine. That told me everything. Inside, the judge moved straight to the point. We're here on the evidentiary hearing regarding service and the alleged forged deed. I want facts, I want documentation, and I want the notary's journal. The attorney stood first, voice smooth. He argued that service was valid and that the recorded deed proved transfer. He painted me as dramatic, emotional, resentful. He tried to turn the case into a family argument instead of what it was. Then the judge looked at me. Defendant, briefly. I kept my voice calm. I'm not asking the court to believe my feelings. I'm asking the court to look at evidence. I was never properly served, and I never signed a deed transferring my home. I have my residence documentation. I have messages showing my mother asked when I wouldn't be home, and I have a threat sent after the court ordered this hearing. The judge's eyes narrowed. A threat? I handed the screenshot to the clerk. Yes, Your Honor. My mother's head snapped toward me. For the first time in months, her mask slipped, not into rage, into panic. Then the judge turned to Elaine. Miss Mercer, you notarized the quitclaim deed submitted in this case. Did you personally witness the defendant sign it? Elaine's lips pressed together. Your Honor, I followed my usual procedure. That wasn't my question. The courtroom went still. Even my father stopped shifting in his seat. Elaine's gaze flicked toward my parents' attorney like she was looking for a lifeline. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight. The judge held out his hand, notary journal. Elaine opened her bag and produced a worn book, pages curled at the corners. She placed it on the clerk's desk like it weighed 100 pounds. The judge flipped to the date listed on the deed. Entry for this notarization, he said. Elaine leaned forward, finger trembling as she pointed. The judge read silently, then looked up. Identification used, he said slowly. Driver's license number ending in 64. My license ends in 31. I didn't even have to speak. The judge saw it in my face. He turned the page back toward Elaine. Explain the discrepancy. Elaine's eyes filled and her voice dropped. I didn't check it closely. My mother made a small sound, like a warning. The judge didn't look at her. Did you witness her sign? Elaine's shoulders sagged. No, Your Honor. A shockwave moved through the room. My father's mouth tightened into a hard line. My mother's hand clenched around her purse strap like she was trying to crush it. Elaine kept talking, words spilling out like she couldn't stop once the dam broke. A woman brought the paperwork. She said the signer couldn't come in, that it was urgent, that the family needed it done. I was told the ID matched. I stamped it. The judge's face went cold. Who brought it? He asked. Elaine's eyes slid to my mother. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like truth being dragged into the light by its hair. My mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's twisting everything. Sit down, the judge said, voice like steel. My mother froze. The judge leaned forward. This court is setting aside the default judgment for improper service. The writ of possession is vacated, and the deed in question is referred for investigation due to credible evidence of fraud. My knees went weak, but I stayed upright. I had learned something in these weeks. Relief can make you collapse if you treat it like permission. I didn't. I simply breathed. Outside the courtroom, my parents didn't rush me. They didn't scream. They didn't plead. They walked away fast, stiff-backed, like people trying to outrun a mirror. Elaine didn't meet anyone's eyes. Deputy Calhoun was there that afternoon, not to remove me, but to deliver an updated notice confirming the writ was no longer enforceable. When he handed it to me, he paused. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm glad you fought it the right way." That night, I changed every lock. I installed cameras on every corner of the house. I didn't do it because I was scared. I did it because peace is not just a feeling. It's a boundary you defend. My mother never apologized. My father never called. Their silence was the closest thing to truth I was ever going to get from them. And honestly, it was enough. Because I still had my home, I still had my name, and I had something they never thought I'd keep: my voice. If you've ever had family try to control you with paperwork, guilt, or private conversations that only happen when they think you're alone, tell me in the comments. Would you confront them directly, or would you do what I did and let the records speak? And if you want more stories like this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to Still Waters Payback.